All right. Good morning, everyone. This is Heather Hawkins, and I'm the grants manager for the South Carolina American Revolution Sesquicentennial Commission. Thank you so much for joining us for our webinar today as we kick off a new year and some new grant opportunities. We'll also be doing a demo today and talking about what some of our folks look at when they review applications. So we're going to, of course, remind everybody that there will be fireworks July 4th, 2026, but so much more to celebrate. The commission chose 1770 to 1783 as the parameters of the American Revolution era. And that is very important, not only when you look at when you can talk about events and talk about these anniversaries, but also as you look at what you can apply for, we're going to make sure we stay within those parameters. So 1770 to 1783, really important dates. And I will let you know, I will be emailing everyone who registered a copy of this PowerPoint, so you'll have those dates and all the notes that we have today with you. So last year, this is what we were able to the last 2 years, I should say, we were able to get grants out to across South Carolina. We've still got some gaps there when we came into 24 fiscal year. And fiscal year for the state runs from July 1 to June 30th. This is where we were when we started this year, and we challenged ourselves to fill in those gaps and make sure that we're sharing the wealth and telling this story and supporting education and cultural tourism across the state. So to do that, we have increased the number of grants. We are now up total for the commission to 115. $1.8 million have been distributed. But we know that 2026, when that crescendo of marketing is going to happen nationwide, internationally, we want to have as many assets ready for 2026, even though we know a lot of those anniversaries aren't until 2030, 2031. We know that the crescendo of marketing will happen in 2026. We want to get as much of that ready as possible. So to do that, the commissioners came back to me and said, we need to speed up this process. So thank you for everybody who's been so patient as we've kind of figured out what we're doing here, starting a brand new grant program. And in order to speed up this process, we decided to take a look at, of course, keeping those County 250 organizing grants. Those are non-competitive and those still remain. We have a few counties left that still need to apply for those, and we're challenging ourselves to get as many of those done this year. And then we have three now of our competitive grant funding opportunities. And I use the word funding opportunities because that's how it's used in the Web Grants program, our online program that we use for applications. So let's talk about these three grant tiers or levels. So first, though, we do want to remind everybody those County 250 non-competitive grants are $3,000, and you can apply if you are the official County 250 committee. So that means you have a resolution from your county council and you have a fiscal agent figured out. Then you can apply, determine your deliverables, work on a budget with me. I'll be glad to assist you with that. There is not a match required. And you can do that anytime before May 7th and still get your funding this fiscal year. Then we have our competitive grants. The Patriots, what we're calling, are up to 15,000. So anything up to 15,000 doesn't have to go through as rigorous review. So it will be part of our monthly now. Yes, you heard me right, monthly review. And we are asking that these projects that are smaller than some of the others get done within 12 months. Now, of course, if you have a specific date in mind, include it in your timeline, talk to us, let us know that you need to extend it beyond that. We will be glad to work with you. But we do really like to see these finish in 12 months. The anticipated deadlines you see there, it's going to be that first business day of the month. Only exception will be March because first business day is actually our commission meeting. So put it off to the 4th of March. So otherwise, it'll be that first business day of the month. And again, the fiscal year will end on the 30th of June. There is no match required. So this is a change for a lot of these grant types that we were talking about before. However, Partnerships and cost share matching funds are highly encouraged and are something that the reviewers are looking for. Again, not required, but if you have match share partnerships that you can talk about, that is great to include in your application. Grant distribution for these is 80% upfront and 20% at completion and approval of your final report, which will include documentation of deliverables, documentation of your measurement of success, documentation of your receipts, and proof of payment on those receipts. So your major competitive grants, those are still going to be increased a little bit because we're doing them quarterly as opposed to just twice a year, which is our original plan for this fiscal year. So major grants are going to be $15,001 all the way up to $125,000. Does that mean that you need to apply for $125,000 just because you can in this category? Of course not. What your budget needs is what you need. So make sure that you're thinking about it that way. But this does require a little more review and due diligence. So they are still going to be quarterly for these. A lot of times in that level, it has to go before the at least executive committee, if not the full commission, to get those approved at that level. And do keep in mind that these dates are subject to change, but we're definitely sticking with March the 26th as our next deadline for the major grants. These do require a match, a 20%. This is of your total budget, not your ask. So I'll show you shortly how you can figure that out. Grant distribution, once again, 80% upfront with 20% at the final report. Select acquisition projects. This is a change we've already made, but some of our acquisition projects, we're going to require 100% of the grant be held up front by an escrow agent, by a closing attorney, if you're doing, again, acquisition. And we are looking at trying to separate acquisition and due diligence and some other things as we go forward with that new policy. And then finally, Premier Project Competitive Grants. These are $125 and $1 on up. These are probably going to be your site development projects, the pull-offs that need to be developed across our state at these American Revolution sites. But they could be other things. You can apply in the other categories. These are 25% of your total budget, same deadlines, but this level will require a full presentation to either the executive committee or the full commission. But once again, 80% up front, 20% at that approval of the final report, with the acquisition projects requiring 100% of the grant be held by the escrow or closing attorney. And do note that these need to be 100% completed by 2033. Doesn't mean you need to take that long, but it would have to be done by 2033. And I'll go back to major. I didn't mention up to 24 months. We'd like these major projects done in up to 24 months if possible. Again, we can talk to you about that, making any exceptions, but you do need to come to us with those questions. So those are our new funding opportunities based on the amount you request. We still have the grant types. Now it's going to change a little bit how you apply, and we'll get to that in just a moment in the demo, but you still have these categories, and some of those same requirements that we've talked about apply to this. So local museum panel grants, though, normally you could only apply up to $5,000. Now you can apply under the Patriot grants and apply up to 15. You are going to have to justify that budget, but make sure that you kind of understand how that shifts a little bit. And again, most of the local activity grants are up to 10, but you would be able to put in a budget of up to 15. Some of the things I did want to note, a lot of people have asked about archaeology. Archaeology would need to be behind those two pillars that we talked about earlier, education and cultural tourism. So those archaeology really needs to focus on, is this site an American Revolution site that we are going to develop for a tourism location? So make sure that you consider that. Also, for the site grants, make sure you're thinking about, if you're looking at new construction, that is probably not for us. Do call us, do talk about it with us. but know that new construction is not our focus, and we would have to have a real clear educational, site development, cultural tourism relationship with any new construction for us for that. And by new construction, I mean a building or new museum, that kind of thing. So there needs to be a conversation before you would go into that application. And I would say for any application, feel free to reach out beforehand. Now, here are just a couple examples that we have here, and let's see if I can.
Heather, I don't hear any sound.
No sound? Okay, I'm so sorry. So he's saying that of the top 25 battles in number of casualties, South Carolina had 7 of them. So sorry if you weren't able to hear that audio, but that's just a little bit from Liberty Live, which is an educational arm of the Southern campaigns of 1780. And that's one of the education grants that we have funded. And let's see, there we go. Some of our local activity grants. We helped fund the Charleston Tea Party event that was held this past December. A local lecture series. I saw a post just this morning where it was a packed house at the last one that they had. So lots of opportunities here. We do have a list of the previously approved grants on our website. I'll show you where to find those. I am in the process of updating those for this last cycle, but I'll have those up shortly. Now, our next thing that we want to talk about is review priorities. And again, we'll see that 1770 to 1783 is very important. And when you go to look at, am I eligible? You do need to be in South Carolina unless you are an individual who is writing about South Carolina and the American Revolution. Otherwise, you need to, or doing research about South Carolina and the Revolution. Otherwise, you need to be located in South Carolina and be specifically, not tangentially related to 1770 to 1783, not general colonial. It really needs to relate back to American Revolution. Are you from or have you buy-in from your local County 250 committee? Many of you on the call today represent your County 250 committee, but if you don't, make sure that you're talking to your local 250 committee. And if you can get a letter from them, wonderful. If even just keeping them in the loop is so very important. Demonstrate partnerships and matching funds, even if not required, as we mentioned earlier. Have a clear budget and thought out project plans, and demonstrate impact and longevity. So even if you're having a single day event, make sure you're saying, how do I set this up to maybe be an annual event? How do I do a template so another community can do a similar event? So giving a little more impact to your application and your one-time application for that. One of the questions we'll be talking about is telling a more complete story. Make sure you check out our website at Get Involved, Telling a More Complete Story. There are a lot of resources there already at your fingertips for ways you can find out more about African Americans in the American Revolution, Native Americans, and we have some actual contacts that you can reach out to at Catawba with the Catawba Group and also our Eastern Band of the Cherokee. And then we're going to talk about applying in the Web Grants program. We want to thank PRT. They've been a wonderful partner with us, allowing us to use their same system for our grant applications. And there are going to be several sections of the application that we're going to go through when we do our demo. So let's talk about some of these sections. The first thing is narrative best practices. So use the Word version to practice. This is a great way to like write up your answers. I have a Word version both on the type. So under the local museum panel grant, if you go to the very bottom and there's some links there, you can find a Word version of that application. Again, you cannot submit that application as your final application, but it's a great way to practice. It's also a great way to share the assurances and with your fiscal agent. So make sure they're comfortable with the application if your county is technically your fiscal agent or the nonprofit that you're working with is technically your fiscal agent. You can share that Word version with them or even cut and paste those assurances and certifications that you'll have to sign off on. So the next is talk about your project summary. This is your chance, your elevator speech. And there are two questions in that top section. One is that elevator speech. What do you want to do with the money? The next one is how does it relate to the American Revolution in South Carolina? Again, be as specific as possible if you can there. And the next majorly important section is your deliverables. Now, deliverables, while there's an answer there on longevity, and I talk more about that can be your emotional reason for doing this. And that's very important, that story of why you want this to work and be impactful on your community. Deliverables, though, need to be tangible items. At the end of the day, you're going to have what? You're going to have an event. You're going to have a website. You're going to have a printed materials or a research project. So what are those tangible items? And I like to actually just number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This section is very important. Actually, both of these sections very important because they will show up in your final contract that you will be signing if you are approved. Then a separate question right underneath deliverables is measurement of success. How are we going to see if this worked? And it may not. I mean, that happens sometimes, but how are you going to measure that? Number of attendees, feedback from the press, social media interaction about the event or about the research that you're working on. So how are you going to measure that? And we can talk a little bit about that if you need some assistance with that question. And then the other section is the longevity, which is very important, that it's going to have an impact beyond just one day, beyond just this one event. So let's talk a little bit about building that budget. That's also very important. Don't create the budget based on the most amount available, obviously. What do you really need? Really look at getting quotes if you can. So do your homework, get those quotes if you can. Not all budget categories may be compatible with your grant type. So feel free to skip a section. For example, County 250 organizing grants aren't going to have any acquisition in them. If a grant request amount is part of a larger budget, please only include SC 250 funding request in the breakdown sections. Your cost share section is where you can show that larger budget amount, or you can also attach a completed, like if you have a master plan for your project, you can attach that in the additional attachments section. Make sure to not exceed the total amount available for the grant type in the breakdown. And this up to amount is listed in your funding opportunity main page. And again, now it's just those 3 sections that you really have to worry about. And it will block you, I think, now as you go to fill out a budget beyond that amount. For the County 250 organizing grants, SC 250 requested amount must total $3,000 exactly. However, the total budget could be larger if you have additional funding from other sources. So maybe you want to do some archaeology and you've got $7,000 from the county, but you need a little extra to finish it out. Then you can use that $3,000 that way. Just again, only in the breakout sections, that's the request. And then the cost share section is where you put any additional funds. Personnel refers to staffing as we look at those sections, and this will make more sense as we do our demo, but there's a personnel section, that's staffing. So if you are a museum and this is your staff that will be doing this, overhead needs to only be administrative staffing, should represent no more than 20% of the budget request. Contractual is going to refer to your graphic artist that you hire or your historian that you hire. So think about that hiring for a specific task. So for matching requirements, you can certainly document in kind, but it will not count towards your final 20 or 25% required. So keep that in mind as you go to fill that part out. And even if it's not required, I reiterate, the SC250 encourages cost share and partnerships. And again, this grant, if it's a required match, it is a percentage of the total budget, not 20% of your ask. So again, I'm going to send you these slides, and here is a little formula that you can use. If you say, I'm going to ask for $300,000, then you divide that by 0.8, and that gives you, well, actually 300,000, you'd have to be dividing by 0.75. And then you would, because that would be in the Premier Project section, so you'd have to have 25%. So I need to update my slide here. But that you would divide it by 0.75, get your amount, and then you would multiply it by 0.25 to get the amount that you would have to have as your match. And I'll update that slide before I send them to you. All right, it is demo time. So let's go ahead and take a look. It looks like we have some folks in chat. So Mike, if you could keep an eye on chat, and I'm going to have to stop my sharing here and go.
Hey,
Yes, go ahead.
hey, do we have the link to this slideshow available?
We won't have a link, but I will have it. I will send it to everybody who is on that registered.
Okay.
So I'll turn it into a PDF and send it afterwards.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Mm-hmm. All right. Is everybody seeing my screen here? Yay. All right. So we now have, here's our home page. And if I can hide my little share screen. Okay. So we have, again, get involved. There are under your county committee, this is where you find that telling a more complete story section. And then also under grants, you can, if you click directly on grants, it will give you actually, let's go ahead and do that so I can show you. This is a great planning page because it talks about those requirements. And you can talk about deliverables, measurement, success, how to build a budget. So there's some tips for applying there. And then if you go to the second drop down, this gives you review panel priorities, and the answer could be awarded, partially funded, or not awarded, or under due diligence. Those can be the answers that come back from your application. Again, the funding opportunities with their breakdowns here, and then the type of competitive grants down here. If I go back to the top, so if I go to the grant programs and then I go to types of competitive programs, then it'll give you those same categories that we had before, and there'll be more details about what the reviewer is going to be looking for in those categories. So that's a great place to look. I also mentioned the webinars here. So once I have this finished, recording is edited and up on our YouTube channel, I'll place it on the webinar page. There is also applicant support and consultation. So if you would like a one-on-one consultation with me, you would go to that page and click on the link to schedule a time that's available. But let's go to the second one, the second drop down here, and that takes you directly to our web grants page. So I'm going to sign in as my external user. Okay. And we're going to work on doing a demo. Does anybody have any questions before I get started on the demo? All good? Okay. So under funding opportunities, you now only see organizing grants, Patriot grants up to 15, major grants 1501 to 125, and 125 and $1 plus for the Premier Project grants. So you'll be selecting under funding opportunities, you'll be selecting one of these here or the organizing grant. And note that when you hover over anything and it turns green, you can click anywhere on that line and it will select it. So I'm going to select a Patriot grant. And because I've done some other grants before, I'm going to copy an existing application. Now I've done a bunch, so we're gonna take a look at this, and I'm just gonna pick one at random. Okay, so I'm gonna select this one in the little dot there, go back and copy the application. And now it should have brought over a lot of my support documents and other items that you do need to edit everything. And that even though there's a check mark here, you do need to edit general information. Make sure you go in and edit because it's going to say copy at the end. So you need a new application title. So, but I'm going to go back because I've been working on one. Let's see. Once you've saved it one time, it will be under applications. And I am going to go down here and find the one I was working on the other day. So this is going to be this one here. Okay, so I'm going to now go in through applications because I've started my application already. So you can stop and start as long as you save. It does not auto save, so keep that in mind. Edit my application, and I'm looking for check marks in all of these right here. So I'm going to look at my components and I'm going to double check all my general information. I'm going to edit my form. And then we're going to say, this is my primary contact. Now, a lot of you have multiple people who'll be working on it on your team. So we do have to put you in the organization. So register through the main portal and then make sure that you give me some kind of signal that you are in that group. And then I can make sure you're connected to the same group. And the reason I do have to approve registration is because of that, and also so we don't have duplicates in the system. Once you are connected to the same organization, you should appear in the dropdown. So I could add my Molly Fortune to this application. She would then have access to any page except this general information page. Me, as the instigator of this, is the only one who can update this page, I believe. So I'm going to save that form. Now I'm going to go to my cover sheet. And I'm going to edit my form. So we have, are you located in South Carolina? And I'm going to say yes. If I say no, it will say, are you an individual doing a publication or research grant for the American Revolution in South Carolina? So you want to make sure that you're answering correctly there. And does your project specifically, not tangentially, but specifically pertain to the American Revolution in South Carolina? What kind of applicant type? So keep in mind the applicant is actually, it needs to be the fiscal agent. Who's going to handle the money? They are technically, who's going to receive that money from the state? They are technically the applicant. So if you are, for example, Jasper County, and Jasper County's fiscal agent is Jasper, if you're the Jasper County 250 group, Jasper County is their official fiscal agent. So they would put government as their applicant type because the applicant is actually the county. Now, here's the new section here. So we've selected our funding opportunity as the level that we want to apply at. But here's our grant type. And I selected local activities grant here. Now you're going to see lots of buttons over on this side. I can save at this point. Every time you save, it's going to take you back to the top. So I tend to not do it all the time because it gets annoying because you have to go back to the top. But do keep in mind, it does not auto save. We also encourage you, if you have multiple people who can be in here at the same time, it's probably better to just have one person working at one time. Now, who will be managing your grant funds? Best practice is to have this be the applicant. And again, that's the fiscal agent is the applicant. And for this example we have here, our Baxley County 250 committee is going to be the project director. They're really going to be doing all the work for the project. So Charles Baxley is our Baxley County 250 committee chair, and he's going to be running this project. He's the project director. But the fiscal officer for Baxley County is going to be Alexander Hamilton. So he's going to be the guy getting the money at the county. But Alexander Hamilton can't approve grants or money being spent. It has to be approved by George Washington. So we need our authorizing officer. Now, if one of these two people can approve the money, then like you're in a nonprofit and this is the administrator who's going to be the fiscal officer as well, fine, no problem. Just say yes here and this section will disappear. But if there is someone else who would have to approve any final money being spent, then you need to say no and fill out this section. All right. The last thing on the cover sheet is your state vendor number. Anytime the state sends money to someone, you have to have a state vendor number. Please keep in mind this is not an EIN number from the IRS. It is not a state of South Carolina charity number. This is a state vendor number. And there's a link here to procurement where you can apply. And you don't have to have this to apply, but you will have to have it if you're awarded. And we encourage you to go ahead and apply because sometimes it can take a while to get a number. So go ahead and start that process, get that number if you can, and put it in there. And it normally starts with a 7. All right, I'm going to save my form, hit any of the buttons. They're all the same. The save buttons are. It takes me back to the top. Now you can also, as you fill out these sections, hit the next button and it should take you to the next section. Or if you go up to the top here, you'll see we have tabs. So I'm on the cover sheet. Now I'm going to go to the narrative. I'm going to edit my form. Actually, let me go back to my cover sheet for just a second. I forgot something. The last thing I want to make sure I always do on each section, if I'm ready, if I'm done, is mark as complete. And then it takes me back to my component list and I can just click on the narrative. Again, anywhere that's green, we'll select that item. So I'm going to select the narrative. We're looking for check marks in all of these categories. So now I'm going to edit my form. We're in the narrative section. And here are those important sections that will be in your contract. Project summary. So this is what's going to happen. We're going to put on a play about the American Revolution in Bexley County. And we hope to make this an annual event. So how does this relate to the American Revolution? It's going to talk about the murder of Captain Burr's family and in 1781 and the skirmish at Beaver Dam, whatever. So I'm making obviously all this up. So, but I'm getting specific about what the play will cover. And even though that's going to be a fictional play, it will be grounded in those facts that we know about those events. So county, we have to select it. Obviously, I don't have a Bexley County in here, but once you select a county, it will automatically choose the number of battles and skirmishes. This is just one factor that the folks who are reviewing take a look at. So those with 4 was mainly Charleston County, where there's like 89 events, battles and skirmishes that took place. And that would be like 4. Then 2 is pretty average. But we want to make sure that if we're giving more money to one county than another, there's a reason. You know, there's more that happened in Cherokee or Kershaw, which is why they were red on our earlier map. But so there's a reason for that. But the other thing, we're supposed to be helping economic development. So this is your DOR tax job credit ranking with the Department of Revenue for your county. So it will automatically produce this number once you save. This also helps us know, okay, well, this county needs a little more economic development, so we need to pour some more money in here for this pull-off as opposed to somewhere else. So those are just 2 factors that we look at. Excuse me. All right. This next question is also if you, excuse me, if you are someone who has taken a look at a grant before, this is where you would list that. I'm going to get a cough drop. I'm going to let Mike and Molly talk for a second. Can y'all talk about what you look at when you're looking at applications?
Sure. Am I jumping in or are you jumping in, Molly?
No, go ahead, jump in.
Well,
Sorry,
okay.
Mike.
Yeah. So I'm Mike. Good morning, everyone. I'm project manager, more sites development for the commission. So when I'm doing grant reviews, I'm looking for as much documentation as possible. What are we doing? Where are we putting it? What is our objective? What are we trying to accomplish? Uh, the other item I'm looking at when we look at funding is I know sometimes when applying for grants, we just put a budgetary number in there, say 10,000 or 20,000. I like to see some estimates of what we're actually funding. Because say a interpretive sign is typically $2,000. Well, sometimes the county will ask for $6,000 for one interpretive sign, which we know, hey, the sign's only $2,000. So where's the other $4,000 going? So if we can show how much money we need and where that money's going, it helps the grant reviewer out tremendously. It helps me out tremendously because I look at what we're purchasing. But outside of that, it's pretty much what are we doing, what are we getting, what are we spending the money on, is what I look for. And as far as site developments, if anybody has any questions, always feel free to reach out to me. We can talk on the phone, via email, text. I can come do a site visit. So if you need any help with sites, DOT, anybody you don't want to talk to, call me and I'll try to help you out.
Thanks, Mike. And he's right. The more due diligence that you can do is going to be helpful. So Heather said beforehand, the Patriot grants aren't necessarily as rigorous. And I would counter that with Molly is. So I'm going to ask those tough questions, which leads me to say, have someone outside of your team review it and say, now, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense to me. Expand on that a little bit. I'm rigorous in the fact that it has to have a nexus to the Revolutionary era. So you're looking at that 1770 to 1783. What is the direct nexus? And Heather touched on that a little bit with, colonial era is beautiful and the constitutional era is absolutely important. But right now we're just trying to separate ourselves from England. So stay within that. I do want to clarify, and not that Heather said anything about this, but archaeology, one of the things that we've discovered in this grant process, Heather and I had some conversations with some folks. We don't want to pay for you to find the site. We are happy to fund archaeology when it is, that is Baxley's defeat, or that is a marooning community that dates exactly to that nexus point, and to help you really gather that information. So there's a difference between us finding it, because if we spend $50,000 and nothing comes up, just remember that's public money. Always keep in mind that you do not want to be on the front page of the paper, and you do not want us to be on the front page of the paper. So as you're putting in grants, just think about that as you do that. Keep numbers. It's funny because I asked someone, I said, okay, you put a marketing together and you had something in a magazine. Tell me the numbers, who it reached. How many people did it reach? Did you start to have some interactions with these people? So I want you to just not think about the end result of we got the magazine out. Show that it actually worked, because then you will know if that is a great vehicle for you to move forward in that, in the coming years past 2026. I am not going, and this is a Molly, I'm not funding firearms and I'm not funding cannons, so don't ask. Okay. Check and make sure that you don't have other groups in your county that are doing something similar. Everybody is so excited and I love it. And we've seen a couple grants come in where two organizations from the same county were actually on the same page trying to do the same project, but hadn't talked to each other. So we were able to actually work on that capacity and do it together. So that partnership is really formed. So just take a minute to kind of, hey, are you working on this? Or are you doing this? Or, hey, that was in the county strategic plan. Maybe we should go ask, get those groups involved. I already said have an outside person. Think outside the box. We talk about sites a lot, and there are a lot of sites, and Mike is absolutely fabulous with this and navigating it for us and navigating it with you. But think about those lectures about for example, which county was it that had, not Bamberg, found the two free men of color in their cemetery? Mike, who was that?
Allendale.
Was it Allendale? I don't think it was Allendale. Thought it was a B. Bamberg, no.
Barnwell.
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 Barnwell found in their veteran cemetery, and might correct me if my story is wrong, two free men of color labeled on their veterans stone. And so they went in and they did a beautiful job of rescuing those and restoring those. And now they have a story. And that is one of our underrepresented groups. So it's not just sites. It's those stories that you can attach to locations, because it involved every single person here in South Carolina. So think outside the box. Do you need brochures? Do you want to put on a lecture series? And hey, maybe it's a great lecture series that you can partner with the Rev War Center in Camden and simulcast or things like that. So think outside the box. Educational is always really important. And I don't necessarily mean K through 12. They're lovely. Love them. We need to do more. So if you've got an idea as in your local school of something to do, let's really talk about it and do it. I know one county gives a Francis Marion book to every fourth grader. Are there projects and it's funded by the chamber, by the way, and it's paid for by the chamber. Think outside the box. Are there things that these kids, and some of these kids have never owned their own book. So not only they learn about the Rev War, but they own something of their own. One group had talked about doing bike trails. The Parks Rec group from their county was doing bike trails, and some of them happen to be going by Rev War sites. So how can we combine those types of things? And then driving tours. We have one county who has a great driving tour that was a very low hanging fruit for them, and they were able to accomplish it. So I say with all these grants, just think outside the box a little bit. Call us, talk to us. We'll be happy to answer any questions. And you can call Mike about anything. You can call Heather about anything. You can call me about anything. We will direct you to the right person. But my role in this is to be that Debbie Downer and push back on those questions a little bit. So the more specific you can get, and it is a pain, I get it, but nobody wants to end up on the front page of the paper.
Thank you, Molly and Mike. I appreciate that very much. And I think I'm okay. And it always happens when you go to do a presentation. So, and I did not mean to insinuate there would not be questions with the Patriot grants, but not as rigorous a presentation as one of the larger ones would be.
Because the goal of that, as Heather said, is to get the money to you as fast as we can so you can get that project underway.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're in the next section, which is project detail. We're still in the narrative, and I'll speed up a little bit here. You do select your type of grant once again, and it populates what questions. This is actually under local activities grants. It gives you some ideas of some local activities grants. And so I picked art project here, and then it gives me some things to think about. So in my answer under execution of plan, I am answering these questions here. And you can read through that and see where those come in. Scholars and peer review, we really want this stuff to be correct. And keep in mind, you need to build into your timeline time for SC250 to review any kind of published piece that you're going to be working on or interpretive sign. So make sure that's in your timeline. Promotion, we don't want this just to live in a vacuum. We want to make sure we're promoting all of these events, even if it's just research. You want to say this is going on in your community, and this is what we found about our community. Deliverables. These are those two really important sections where you have your items. I list them. What am I going to have at the end of the day? Completed play, and we're going to have peer review, and we're going to have a mini exhibit in the lobby that the museum's going to help us with, and there can be web pages with the QR codes on the exhibit so you can learn more after you come to the play. So that's the product, the tangible items. And then down here, my measurement of success for this example, we're going to look at the attendance at the event, media coverage, social media interaction, participation from the community, clicks on the web pages, feedback from participants and attendees. For inclusion, they are looking for a known story that we can include that is of African American participation in the war. And that may be just, this is the process we're going to go through to look for that. Participation and access. This we do because this is state money. If there is a charge, you want it to be a lesser charge than it would have been without the funding. So keep that in mind. There needs to be some kind of access, public access to documentation or to the play itself, to attending, something like that. Engagement. So beyond just the play, again, we're going to have that exhibit. We're going to have those web pages so people can continue learning and have some takeaways from the event. Longevity and lasting impact. So this author is going to donate this play. The community players are going to have it. They're going to try to make it an annual or biannual performance. And these museum web pages will remain up. The exhibits will be stored for another viewing. So that's the longevity piece. Partnerships, we're working with the school district and the community college and the community theater and the museum, and the Chamber of Commerce is helping with publicity, and Career Center is going to build the sets, like whoever you're working with, talk about not only who they are, but what they're bringing to the table and how you document that commitment. So partnership's very important. Now I'm going to save my form when I get to this point. It's going to take me all the way back to the top, and I have to scroll back to the bottom section. So don't forget to do a timeline, because it will make you scroll all the way back. Anytime you have an attachment set, it functions a little differently. You have to save the written section, and then you get to this section, you can add a row, and I'm going to add review of project meeting, and we're going to have a after action discussion will be added on to 2 of 25. Save the row. So, and again, when you save it, it takes you to the top. You got to scroll back down, but now it is listed in your timeline. And I've finished all my sections. So what do I have to do? Mark the section as complete. You can hit any one of the mark the as complete sections. Here is your assurances and certifications. This is the next section. And this is basically saying that you agree that everything's accurate. You agree you're willing to have a pre-grant meeting with me. You're not going to use any funds for lobbying. I know we've got some chambers who are allowed to do that under their 501c6, but that's not allowed under this grant. You're going to list our logo and give credit to SC250 in your project. Public access, funds not used will be returned, and we hope you use them for the purpose, though. All right, so but read through these carefully and make sure your fiscal agent is comfortable with that. Then you would put the yes, so this is like saying you agree to all these terms. Here's the person who's agreeing, what organization they're in, and their role. And then if you are a government entity, if your fiscal agent is a government entity, we just find it smart to make sure that your highest elected official is going to be the one who knows they're in the loop. So you have talked to your county council chairman, Thomas Jefferson here, and he understands and agrees with applying for this grant. So everybody's filled that part out. We're going to mark it as complete. Go into my next section, support materials. Now, there are a lot of things listed here. These check marks do not mean they're complete in this instance. I know that's confusing. It actually just means they're required. It's under the required column. So there are other things that we encourage you to complete, even if they're not required. There are headers here to look at. So recommended for all grant types, County 250 support letter, again, not required. If you are a County 250 group, you can skip that section. You can click here for a list of contacts for those local committees. The fiscal agent or project director is the County 250, then you can skip. And if you're outside of South Carolina and don't have a county committee, then you can upload a document that says that. So there's my support letter from my County 250. Here is my W-9. Make sure it's signed. I can't tell you how many people didn't sign them. Current approved budget. Now, you may have a fiscal year that starts on July 1, like we do, or you may have an October budget, or you may have a January budget. That's fine. Whatever current fiscal year you are in, that is your functioning budget right now, and it has been approved by your executive team, then that needs to be listed here. And this is for the applicant, for the fiscal agent. The fiscal agent also needs to attach last year's audit, or it could be a 990 for the nonprofits. It could be just simply, if you have a calendar year budget, your December report from your treasurer that gave a yearly update. So so it's not like the last month's fiscal statement or financial statement. It is the last summary of last fiscal year. And so that in this case, I did the full audit because it was a county. I know they're huge, but you can usually get a zip file to save there. All right. If you're a nonprofit, these 4 items are required as well. So you have the IRS 501c3 or 501c6 letter. This is not your EIN letter. I get a lot of those. Make sure it's a letter that says you are a nonprofit. Your Secretary of State annual charity registration letter. I get a lot of these that are expired. Make sure that you have one. These are annual charity registration letters, so make sure you get an updated one. List your board members and your mission statement. Again, this is a county fiscal agent, so I only had to fill out those 3. Now, if I was doing a county organizing grant or an asset assessment, I would need to upload my County 250 contact spreadsheet and documentation of my resolution. If I'm looking at a museum style panel grant and I am not representing the location, I would need to have a memorandum of understanding with that location where that museum panel is going to be. So just read through each section. This is for signage and markers. This is for site acquisition. These are additional potential support documents. And then here you can attach anything. So you would just add a new attachment over here. And in these cases, if they're named documents, if you have a concept sketch of your pull-off, then you might click on that, you select your file, and then you do have to put a description. It is required, and save your file. Once you have everything that is required and you've got everything additionally you want to attach, mark as complete. And then we'll go to the budget. And here are the sections we were talking about. So personnel, that's staff. Supplies and materials. We've got sets and props and costumes and exhibit materials and playbills. Those are all materials, and they'll go under that section. And it gives you like each item, and then it gives you a summary of that section. No equipment that we need to buy or rent, but we do have quite a few contractual breakdowns. So we're giving the playwright an honorarium. Historic research and peer review gets an honorarium there's 3 people who are doing that. And if I need to add something here, I'm going to add a row for our graphic designer and our web designer. And it's going to be an additional $1,000. I'm going to save that. It always takes you to the top. Every time you add a row, you got to scroll back down. Sorry, I don't know why, but it does. And now you can see that second graphic design line there, and that's your total. And there's your total for that section. I'm not going to have any acquisition, other expenses. A lot of marketing goes into other expenses. And then here I've talked about the cost share. It's not required because I'm only asking for a total of $9,800. However, I want to demonstrate that the Career Center is doing marketing. The community players are giving us the building. The museum staff time is being donated. The college staff time is being donated. So in-kind can be documented, but it cannot be used for required match, but we don't have a required match for this section. And if you do have a required match, it's usually good just to, so you know your calculation, at least put that in first. This gives you your total project budget here. So I'm going to mark this section as complete. I now have check marks, and you'll note it's turned green here. So this will be red until you have all your check marks. And you'll notice that I now have a submit application button. And you can actually, even though there are check marks here, you can still edit these sections. I'm going to submit, and then once I hit this red button, there is no going back. So I'm going to actually cancel so I can use this one again. But then it would be submitted, and there we go. So that is a demo. I'm going to exit out of this and see if I can get back to my PowerPoint. I have a few more slides and we'll be wrapping up. Thank you so much for your attention today. And we're going to go through the last of these. Is everybody seeing that? Good. Okay, excellent. All right, just a recap. Again, check out, explore our South Carolina 250 website within the grants tab. There's lots of information there. Really figure out if it has to do with that American Revolution, 1770 to 1783. Copy that application. Don't start from scratch if you don't have to. Oops, excuse me. Show partnerships and cost share, even if not required. Demonstrate clear deliverables and research budget. Demonstrate impact on longevity. And go ahead and register for that state vendor number. And you can set up direct deposit with them as well. And that speeds up once if you are approved, then you would go a little faster with getting that payment. And to recap, deadlines, May 7th, anytime before that for the County 250, monthly deadlines for the major, for the major and premier projects. Actually, no, that should be the Patriot projects. I apologize when you make too many changes too fast. So premier projects would not actually be in the quarterly cycles over here as with the major. And this needs to say the Patriot projects, Patriot grants are monthly. And then again, check out the webinars page where we'll have this recorded. And Tuesdays and Thursdays are my days that I have kind of office hours. And that's where you can do those one-on-one app support calls with me. There's a Doodle appointment link that you can find on that page that I showed you earlier. Oh, excuse me. And then I really quickly, because I know everybody's got to go, I want to mention a few other quick things. If I can get my computer to work for me today. Okay, maybe not. Here are some things to keep in mind if you are representing a National Register location or a site that is potentially a National Register site. Talk to Virginia in the SHPO office about National Register applications. But if you would be eligible, you could apply and be eligible for these National Park Service grants for the 250th. The American Battlefield Trust are one of our statutory partners, working with the Battleground Preservation Trust on Liberty Trail. Did you know that they have field trip grants? So that's a great opportunity there as well. And make sure that you check out our Meet the Funders event. You can watch the segments from Parks, Recreation, and Tourism, Archives and History from me, but that'll be a little outdated. But the Berkeley County folks talked about some of their grant programs that they have internally. And then the Arts Commission and South Carolina Humanities talked about their grant programs. So there are lots of other things out there that you can check out. The State Library has a great cache of foundations. You can also set up free tutorials with them as well. They have a wealth of knowledge on the South Carolina State Library page. And here we are. This is us. Please get in touch if you need any assistance. We want everything to have really strong applications and be able to support those education and cultural tourism grants. and be ready when 2026 rolls around to have as many assets ready as possible. So with that said, anybody have any questions for me today?
Keep in mind that while 2026 is, the fireworks and wonderful stuff, and there was stuff going on in South Carolina, lots of skirmishes, also think after 2026.
Of
So
course.
yeah, and Heather and I talk about this all the time because we are trying to really focus on the counties and have at least, one site, one story, something for the counties to show off in 2026, but also think long term. This goes on for a good long while, and we want to make sure that the projects that you have or the thoughts that you have get woven into your city and your county so that they're continuously thought of, because at the end of the day, it's tourism.
Absolutely. See, we have a question about the word links. I'm going to quickly pull up the website again and show you that. Give me just a second. And close out this and go back to my internet. Okay. Back on our website. So under our grants tab, under our grant programs, under our types of competitive grants, if you go to any one of these, so education grants, well, there we go. And it would give you more specifics on the requirements, who's eligible, how to apply, making sure you select education grant on the cover sheet, stuff like that. And then if you get all the way to the bottom on any of those types, those competitive types, you will find how to register. That gives you a step-by-step on how to register in web grants, how to submit your application. There's a step-by-step on going through that same project I just demoed. Link to the webinars. There is a sample Excel spreadsheet for if you're required for a contact list is required. You can use that spreadsheet to fill that out for a contact sheet. Word document with paper version for application for reference and preparation only. Again, you do have to complete the application in web grants, but this does help you on each one of these kinds. There should be, if you click on that, it should pull up. It actually just downloaded it. And I don't know if you'll be able to see it because it's popped up on my other screen. Let's see, there we go. So this just gives you basically what's online, and it helps you kind of just know what you need to gather. Here's those narrative questions that you can just work in here and add your answers, then cut and paste. A lot of people do that. And then when we get down to the assurances, these are all the things that you need to make sure your fiscal agent who is actually the grantee is comfortable with before they sign off on it. So support materials list to help you gather those. And you can even work on your budget notes here. So that's that. All right, other questions? I did a great job. Wow. Okay.
Great job. I have a question for you, Heather.
Sure.
Since I recently stepped into the role of chairperson
Yes, sir.
for Cherokee, can I still be involved in that grant writing process? Or, for instance,
Absolutely.
I wrote that for our education grant last year, but I didn't know if I needed to step back and let somebody else do that this time.
No, the chairperson can certainly be the applicant. It can be the
Okay.
person, the project manager for, like, as you were for the education grant. Obviously, there are a lot of things the chairman has to do in addition. So if you have those subcommittee chairs, that's wonderful, So,
Right.
but you can certainly still be that project director, and if you're like for Charleston's example, they're a 501c3 themselves, their organization is, so they could be the fiscal agent as well. We do like to have at least 2 people. So your fiscal officer and your project director need to be 2 people, 2 different people. Yeah.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Thanks for the question, Tim.
Go ahead.
Well, guys, I hope that wasn't
Wait
overwhelming.
a second. Pelham has a question.
Okay.
Yes. As you know, we are just getting started, and I'm having a organizing committee meeting this afternoon. This will not be the people who are actually working on the programs, as they are sort of, oh, this is obligatory. Okay, so I know I'm not dealing with the people that are going to be involved, and I have some ideas on people with certain expertise, such as the grants writing and management. Can I work in a stipend for that person?
Well,
that
you
would
know,
be-
we have a grant that's out in one of our communities that they hired an intern to do some of the work because they didn't have the capacity, but they knew that they needed to do the project. So we would take a look at it. Heather, there's something about a percentage.
The Library Society is an example of they hired they have a grant writer who does the work for them that they have hired. So she's a subcontractor. So I think the administrative 20% that they included, part of that I think is going to her. So you know, that's understandable if that's, you know, if you don't have that capacity. Just I would keep it at no more than 20% of your budget. Yeah, good question.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
Heather,
to Cynthia's question on the chat, how long does it take to hear if you're approved or not? So the Patriot grants, we're going to try to do it every month. The other grants sometimes may have to go before the commission, just due to level of approval. And the Premier grants you'd have to do you would have to present, and that would be quarterly. So the Patriot grants are really the ones that we're trying to get out every month.
I put some estimated award dates on there, but again, those are estimates, and that would be if there's not a lot of due diligence that's required. We have, I believe I put, you would hear in May for the second week in May, because that would put us after the commission meeting in May. And then if you apply by the March 26th date. So, and then if you are looking at applying in July, then that would be, unfortunately, because of when we would have our commission meeting, probably not until September, the first part of September. So
We are
keep
trying
that in
really
mind.
hard to, we're trying really hard to get the money to you. So it all goes back to due diligence. If we've got a lot of due diligence that we have to do on our end, it is going to prolong it. Maddie, you had a question.
yes, my question was similar to Ms. Pelham's question, hiring someone to do the research and a lot of the legwork, namely Larry Huff. I know you know him, he's on the board, so is that okay? I need to move forward on that. Is that okay to pay him a percentage?
Would that be a conflict of interest, as he is?
He would have to
commissioner?
disclose that to the foundation, to the SC 250 foundation, as a possible conflict of interest, because he's not supposed to be paid. So let's just talk, Maddie. Let's figure that one offline. I mean, he's the right person to do it for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Okay, sounds good. Just give me a call.
Anybody else? Thoughts, concerns, prayer requests? Pelham's got another question. You're muted, babe. You're muted, friend. Sorry, I didn't mean to call her babe.
Okay. Are we okay?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Will this be available as a complete video of everything that was asked and said?
Yes, ma'am.
How soon do you think?
My goal is Friday morning. My goal is Friday morning,
great.
but I do have
Okay.
to edit it. Yeah. So cut off. We talked a little bit at the beginning,
Great.
and I forgot to pause the recording. So
All right. Great.
This is not a secret. So, you know, if you have questions or you're in a meeting and you're like, oh, I hadn't thought of that, I wonder if, reach out. Mike's on the road quite a bit, so he may not be able to get right back to you. I've been on the road quite a bit myself, but we will get back to you.
And I see some specific to your county questions in the chat. So if you do have another specific question, just reach out to me and we can get a more specific answer for you.
And just so y'all know, this type of thing has never been done before on the state level. So we appreciate you coming on our journey and helping us learn and get it done right.
All right. Well, folks, we're excited about projects. Are y'all excited about getting some projects done? I hope.
I know Tim is.
good.
I know
All right.
Pelham is too.
All right, guys.
For all you do.
Thank
Oh,
you
thank
for all
you.
y'all do. So we appreciate you so very much. Thanks for being with us today for this webinar. And if you have ideas for other webinars you'd like to see, please let me know.